To the big one, the Gold Cup chase, which in typical years could take a little bit of time to go through because we try and make a bit of a case. We talk about the fact that it is the Holy Grail, and we talk about the fact there's multiple fences to jump, and even though it's like one horse that could be a standout contender, there's loads of horses in behind that you can make a case for. Not this year, Will. We probably could actually spend time going through every single horse and still not take as much time as we normally would in a typical year. But Galopin Des Champs, I don't think there's a person in the world that doesn't think that Galopin Des Champs will win the Gold Cup. It's just a question of if he makes a mistake or something untoward happens, and then something has to benefit from that. Then if you're trying to think about the horses that potentially could benefit from that, the only one I thought after last year's Gold Cup, even with the exception of all the novices that come through this season, only horse I could see that could give him a challenge this year was Jerry Colombe that did last year, and everything went wrong for Jerry in the race last year, but it's got even worse. Everything's gone wrong for him this year because he's not made it out ever since the champion chase at Down Raw, where he was poor, not running the Savills, not run after. He's obviously met with a setback. So I think the race is literally just completely and utterly falling apart for Galopin Des Champs. Not that he needed it to be easier, but it's getting even easier and easier for him. And he's such a good horse in the fact that he's not like a horse that needs anyone else in the race to show his ability in his class. You could just put him around on his own and he'd run the same fractions, he'd do his own thing, and he's still looking absolutely worldly. So I can't imagine a world where he gets beat. I don't want to even think about that. When I touched on earlier, I looked at the betting without markets just to see if I could find anything in there. Nothing in there even got me excited either. So there'd be the type of one, if I can find something, I have to find it nearer the off. But I don't. Nothing's going to change between now and then to change my mind about having issues with horses that are in behind. And even when you look at horses like Monty Star, that could be like a Dower Stayer stuff, you just know that typically in a Gold Cup, he's not really worthy of being in the frame. But I suppose I have to get that out of my head that this isn't a typical Gold Cup. There aren't as many challenges as there normally are. It's not as deep, and it is just everyone playing for second place behind Galopin Des Champs. But how do you see panning it out, Will? First of all, there's no way Galopin loses, is there, bar incident?
No, I don't think so. I think he's proved this season, after getting beat in the John Durkan, which he did do last year as well, he improved through each of his next two starts at Leopardstown and won the Gold Cup, mightily impressively last year for me. I think actually probably his best Gold Cup performance in some respects was the year before, because it all went a bit wrong for him that day, didn't he? He got in behind and didn't jump with the fluency that he can do. And that showed the ability that he's got to go and be able to pick up a Gold Cup field and run away from them in the manner that he did that day. And last year was a bit more plain sailing, wasn't it? So, and I think this year will be very similar. I'd be surprised, like you said, barring accidents, God forbid, then I don't see any horse with the ability or potential to improve to even close to his level, really. Like you said, Monty Star, he's a grinder for me. Banbridge is heavily ground dependent. If it came up fast, he'd have a chance. But you just think that Galopin Des Champs will drag it out of him, and that'll be that. Corbett's Cross, never been properly convinced by, I must admit. And then you're going a bit further down. I think the one horse who might be overpriced now in a market without, potentially, I'm by far from cast iron on this, but is L'Homme Pressé for one or two reasons. I've never been 100% convinced he's a guaranteed stayer, and I sort of crabbed his performance in the Gold Cup last year on account of that when he wilted late on. But it turns out he struck into himself, didn't he? I think on that occasion. So you can certainly forgive him not wanting to run up that hill after having run 3 miles and then cutting himself. I certainly wouldn't want to do that myself. And I thought he ran really well in the King George, nice seasonal opener. He won very cosily in the Cotswold. Obviously, the form of that is a million miles away from Galopin Des Champs, but Charlie Deutsch, he never felt was under any inclination that he wasn't going to win that. And you can just scrap the Ascot Chase run, I think, because he as he gets older, he seems to be less and less suited to going right-handed. And Charlie Deutsch probably thought, well, with the Gold Cup 4 weeks away, why am I going to persevere with a horse here who I'm going to have to try and get back into contention over every fence? I'm going to go to the well, give him a hard race. Whether something was amiss, I don't know. But it probably more looked to me like there's no point in me persevering with this. So as a result, he's been pushed out, hasn't he? And you can see why, because there are questions to answer. But I think you could give legitimate answers to some of those questions. So he might be a play in the market without, but That's all it is, really.
Interesting, because I think the 6-1, I think he is with Betfair's the only one I can see price at the moment without market. 3
You'd
places.
even want bigger than that, really.
Yeah, that's the tricky thing with it, because at the moment we've still got Grey Dawning in the bet, haven't we? Because as much as they said he won't go here, the way that this race is starting to whittle up, if he's doing bits of work and he seems fairly close to his A game, he'd be in with he'd be definitely filling the frame even off the back of a bad season. But with this one, I think like the reality probably has to be, I know obviously everything has its price and gamble responsibly, of course, but when you look at 1-2 about Gallopin Des Champs, when genuinely if you polled the whole of the racing population, 99% of people probably would be close to it. I know it doesn't quite work out like that, but the 1-2 about him isn't terrible. It's only because it's a Gold Cup and there's potentially the risk of the extra fences and people thinking stuff like that as well. But like he's definitely one that never got involved in early in the season. I got a tiny bit on him after Fat to Fold did him at the John Durkin, but he's another one that's never been huge a price. And when he gets beaten that John Durkin, you want to see him do something after, don't you? Just to clarify it. But he's one that you could definitely still get in some of those multiples, because if you're getting 1-2 about him, it means you can boost up the price of Ballyburn to even bigger, can't you? If you stick them two in a double. And then it's very inexpensive then if you're sticking your little small bets that you can get to Gold Cup Day and end up having a few quid riding on Gallopin Des Champs, which should come to fruition. It's going to be phenomenal to see, though.
It would be, yeah. I was looking back through the shortest price winners of the race, and the most recent one that I can see is Best Mate for his third Gold Cup was 8-11. That was the SP. So, you know, are you going to get shorter for Gallopin Des Champs, or are you going to, you know, I mean,
push him out.
Depends what the kind of makers had.
They can't push him out, can they? Because there's nothing to take him off.
No, there isn't. You're right. There isn't.
But they might do. But it's one of those, isn't it? There's the definite thing that we like is a fact is there's only so short he could ever get. Whereas, like I said, when you look at those champion chases, when you get horses gone off at 1-4, now they've got less fences to jump, but they're the ones that do get turned over because they're going over fences at a furious gallop. And I know the Gold Cup's still going to be a reasonable size field because they will just have social runners and stuff in there. But touch wood. It's not even going to be like it's a max field of 24 where he's got congestion and horses falling in front of him to deal with. It'll just pop away out the front, won't it? And it should just be plain sailing. But no one needed to watch anyone's preview to be told that Gallopin Des Champs, the two-time Gold Cup winner and one of the greatest racehorses of all time, is going to win this. Stick him in a double with Constitution Hill for the all-time great.